in this video, what we're going to do is take a few minutes, okay, maybe more than a few minutes,
probably,
and take a look at the production workflow that we plan on following throughout the ADP course. This is going to probably end up being a lengthy video. There's a lot of stuff in here that you may be familiar with, you may not be familiar with. If you would like to just zip to the very end because you don't want to hear such a grand overview, you are welcome to do so. But we are making this available to those that are interested in seeing the grand plan, if you will, if you've never tried tackling a project this large.
Well, in general, this is going to cover everything we're going to be doing to come up with our final result. And in a way, it's going to overview what we're going to be doing throughout the entire class.
It really is. We're not breaking this up in terms of this video product, that video product. We are breaking this up in the workflow, basically starting with pre-planning, going through production, from there into post-production, and then the completed product.
That's right.
So that is how we're presenting this. So once again, if you'd like, you can use that fast forward button and move to the very end and see the block diagram Zach's going to draw. Or do like us. Kick back, hang out with us, and this is just going to be lighthearted discussion of what it is we have planned.
That's right. Now, for starters, what I'm going to be doing, as Jason mentioned, is drawing out a block diagram of all of the steps as we go. So let me go ahead and create our first block. So bear with me for just a sec.
Look at him using these fancy lines now.
Yeah, well, you know.
And they're still crooked. Anyways,
hush.
This first one, as he's about to write it out, it's going to be pre-planning. And pre-planning plays a critical role in any production.
And you can't have too much planning, really. I mean, you can spend too much time doing it, but you can't over-prepare. Because every single thing that you come up with here you're going to find is going to help you out later. But what do we mean when we say pre-planning? Now, I'm going to write a few things down here. In the end, I may end up having to erase what I write down to make room. But just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that will go into your pre-planning, we have your initial story. So what are you got to decide what's going on in your animation.
And actually, initial story idea, if you want.
That's true. I mean, your story's not going to be completely realized at first. I don't expect anybody to jump into this class and go, oh, I've got it.
Well, they will have it at first. They're going to have some grand story that's going to involve armies and, well, technically require 20 people to help put it together.
That's
if they want to get it done in a year or so.
You're going to have to get on the phone and call up George Lucas and Industrial Light and Magic.
Oh, that was one of the things I loved about working at the Renaissance Center when I was teaching the Advanced Maya courses, when we would have students have to put together a 30-second to 60-second piece.
I've been there, too.
Yeah, or even back in the old Maya fundamentals or the
Maya I-12.
Yeah, the Maya I-12 class. Those were great times because we'd say, all right, you have to come up with an idea. You now have the next 2 weeks in order to put this idea together. And some of the ideas that students would present to us were just staggering, mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, look, I'm going to have 15 characters. There's going to be this bar brawl, and then there's going to be, and then there's going to be, and then there's going to be, and let's not forget the explosions and the earth that cracks and the photorealistic effects, and the lighting is just going to blow your mind. And I'm just standing there going, right, in 2 weeks.
We're going to recreate Helm's Deep in 2 weeks. So right here at this part of the pre-planning stage, you're going to lock down your story. That's going to take several steps. I mean, you're going to have to figure out what type of story is it you want to create. Is it going to be a humorous story? Is it going to be a dramatic story? Is it going to be some sort of mystery? Is it, what overall feel are you going for?
Right.
Now, in general, in this class, we're going to be going for the humorous approach because, in general, that's the easiest one to get across to people. You're going to find that the folks who are watching your video want to laugh. Everybody wants to laugh deep down, but they may not necessarily want to be scared or impressed or engaged. You might have some idea. It's like, oh, I've got it. I'm going to have this big robot marching across a battlefield, knocking out soldiers on their way to play capture the flag or something. And people will watch that, and not all of them will think it's as cool as you do.
But as you are picking the emotion that you're targeting, please keep in mind what I said just a second ago. Think about the story as it starts to materialize in your head. Is it something that you can realistically handle by yourself?
Exactly.
That is so important. Anyone can come up with a story, and just turning artists loose to come up with stories is danger if they are beginners, because the stories they want to produce are going to be too big.
Well, even if you're not just a beginner, because we've been in that boat too. We can actually speak from experience. Project 3 in Maya Fundamentals.
Oh, yeah.
is the great one I always fall back on. Because for those of you who have completed Maya Fundamentals, and if you haven't, do so, Project 3, you have a robot marching through snow, shoots his laser, and blows something up. And that's it. It's very, very small. Now, the initial idea that we came up with was a lot grander than that.
Much.
We had a robot surrounded by gantryways and gangplanks that gets stolen out of a hangar and tries to escape while things are chasing it and shooting at it, and there were explosions, and it was glorious, and that got
If we would
down.
have produced that and the course would have been called Maya Fundamentals, then I would have finally let all of my students in that class and Zach have their way and just hit me over the head with a board, because at that point it definitely shouldn't have been called Fundamentals.
That's true.
But we did scale it back to a more fundamental, if you will, story.
Well, it's something that we could actually give to you in X number. It still took us like a 30-hour project.
Yeah, it did.
What we had wanted to do would have been hundreds of hours.
Now, targeting an emotion for your story is really important. It really is, because if you can pull some emotion out of your viewer, then right there, you've just won.
That's right.
If you can make them laugh, you just got into their head, you pulled an emotion out, you just won. If they just sit there and at the very end your little credits roll and they go,
I don't get it. Yeah.
Then you didn't just win.
Exactly.
They're not going to run off to their best friend and say, oh, you've got to see this. This is the greatest thing ever. So you really want to try to target some sort of emotion. I have seen pieces in the past that have been creepy, have been somewhat scary, that have been sad and touched me. And, of course, I have seen a million things that made me laugh. And all of these things that have pulled some sort of emotion out of me did nothing more than make me turn to the person to my left and say, oh, you've got to see this. This is great stuff.
That's right.
So that's really important.
And just, I can't overemphasize it enough. Try, if you're completely new to this, try not to get too wrapped up in, I'm going to make something that is cool. Try to avoid cool if you can. Not everybody thinks the things that you think are cool.
Yeah, let's go for story. Think about story.
Go for something a little deeper than cool. Anyways, some considerations for your story will be how many characters do you want to have involved? This is a big question. You're going to have a character. That's one of the requirements for your animated short. At least a character. And I don't mind if it's just one. If you
can do just one.
If you have one character doing something that's pretty interesting or funny or creepy or whatever is driving toward that emotion you've decided to target, that's great. If you want a second character, that's fine too. If you want 3 or 4, or keep pushing it up.
Start thinking about the time that will be involved in pulling this off. If you've got 1.5 years to work on this every single day, that's great. If you happen to have a massive render farm and a fantastic graphical workstation, that's great. If, on the other hand, you don't have a lot of high-end hardware, start thinking about the time required to pull this off.
That's right. And don't just think that, if I go from 1 character to 2, then my amount of work has doubled, because that's not true.
That's not true.
It goes up almost exponentially, because you've got suddenly another whole character rig, a whole other skinning scenario to come up with. You've got animation for these 2 different characters who may animate in 2 entirely different ways. Let's say you had a humanoid and his pet spider.
But at the same time, taking a look at that in a different direction, if they're both biped characters, fortunately tools have advanced far enough nowadays in some of the newer releases of our packages like Max and Maya that you can simply map rigs from one character to another, as long as, for the most part, they match.
That's right.
It's not like you're going to take a biped character and match his rig over to a spider.
No.
That's not going to work so well.
That'd be cool if you could. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. The number of characters you have to tell your story is going to affect everything about your timeline and everything you're trying to accomplish. So really take some time and think about that. Think about what kind of environments you're imagining. Where is your story going to take place? How hard will it be, or easy will it be for you to create those environments? I have seen some animated shorts that were an absolute trip to watch. I really got a kick out of them, and they were nothing more than a couple of characters talking on a completely white studio photograph background. So it was like you couldn't see the wall, floor, corner. It was just like a white open area, kind of like the Matrix. And I've seen good stuff like that. If that's what you're going for, then fine. If you want something more elaborate, that's fine too, but think about the amount of work that's going to go into it and how that's going to affect the rest of your production. What is the purpose or point of the story? You've targeted an emotion now, so how are you going to bring that emotion out? Is there some sort of a punchline or a moment of clarity? Is there a plot twist at some point? How are you going to take your characters from the beginning of your story to the end of your story? Even if you don't know the story, you need to think about this. If your story is supposed to be funny, how are we going to get from introducing the character to whatever this funny point is you want to bring across? These are the kind of things you need to be considering as you come up with your story.
And again, big picture. This is initial story idea. And this is exactly what Zach did with his little World of Warcraft spoof.
Yeah.
So he sat down and he started coming up with this initial story, which leads us to the next part, which is critical, which is discuss this with someone and lock it down. Don't just keep it to yourself.
Right.
Everybody out there knows somebody. Every student in this class has got family members, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever it may be, a best friend. Share your story ideas. See if you can pull some sort of emotion out of them just by telling them the story.
Even if you live in a closet, you've got all these great people in your classroom that you can talk to as well.
Zach ran several different ideas by me, and when he was running the World of Warcraft idea by me, at first I was just staring at him blankly.
And he didn't like it.
Until he got to the end, and then I was like, there's possibly a diamond in the rough with that.
Yeah.
We can polish that up into something nice. So I started giving him my feedback. And I'm asking you guys, the students, to do the exact same thing. Get your friends to give you feedback, or family, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Let them tell you, that's not bad, but if you did this, it could make it even funnier. Or they might say, I don't get it. That's just dumb.
Right, you want to make sure you don't have to explain it too much. But there were elements in our story that came out only through discussion.
That's right.
There were ideas that you threw into it, and I was like, hey, that's really good. Let me add that in. Ooh, but we could take it and we could twist it like this, and the story grew through that interaction.
So don't underestimate the value of discussing your ideas with someone else and getting their feedback.
That's right.
From this, get your story locked down. Okay, this is very important. It's locked down. This is your blueprint. This is what you're going to follow to construct everything from concept art to storyboards to final rendered animation.
Yeah, because you won't want to get deep into it and
change your story.
Yeah, you're like, oh, and let's make the character a woman. Now you've just given yourself a lot of a problem. So get the whole thing locked down before you go any further. Next, write out your script.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, here we go. I need to write
So we'll write
down.
script on this one here. This is very important. You now have your story locked down. Let's get a script in place so that you can work from the script.
That's right. Now, scripts are kind of an interesting thing. If you've never written one before, you might want to go seek out some inspiration. You can see all sorts of scripts scattered all across the internet. If you're not very good with dialogue, I would recommend you go watch some movies. You're trying to make an animated short, which is in and of itself a movie. See how other major film directors handle dialogue, especially similar situations to what it is you're trying to convey. How do they handle discussion going from one person to another? How do they keep the viewer engaged just through talking? Think about that kind of thing as you write it out. Now, don't assume that the script you're writing actually sounds good. Say it to somebody else. If you can, act it out. In fact, I would demand, if you want this to really play out well.
And have a little bit more fun with it, do something that I had Zach do. Record it.
Yep.
Record yourself acting it out as you read through the script and then play it back. Play it for someone else. Get a feel for what it sounds like when it's not coming out of your mouth at that moment.
That's right. And play it back. Walk away for 5 minutes and come back and watch it yourself, because you're going to find, ooh, that doesn't sound right, or this doesn't work, or because we even had a really major situation like that take place in the development of our story, which was the entire tone of our goblin character and his interactions with the knight didn't sound right. They just weren't conveying the emotion that we were looking for. And in fact, in the beginning, our goblin sounded too surly. He was just a little bit too much. He was
too confident and too arrogant.
Yeah.
He took his first second to act as if he was afraid for his life,
and then
he had this grand plan of having this tree behind him that will take care of matters, and he became a bit cocky.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it killed the punchline, because the viewer immediately starts to suspect that something is up.
Exactly.
And so we were shooting ourselves in the foot. So we had to go back and record it a few times before we even realized that. We're like, oh, you know what? We need to soften this up. The dialogue needs to be changed to more passive, more frightened choice of words. We need to change inflection and things like that. You need to really think about your motivation. Now, why is acting so important? You're animating characters. If you can't act out a certain emotion, neither can your character.
That's right.
So make sure that you go through this and that you act it all out. And please, if you can, record it and play it back for you and for other people as well. Get that feedback and make edits based on that feedback. Next, and this is just something I want to bring up to help you out, and it's some ideas to help you get past a block. Because it's entirely possible you'll sit down to write out this story or your script, and you just won't know where to go. You'll just be staring at a blank page with your full cup of coffee, and you won't know where to begin. Start off with inspiration. There's probably been many times where you saw something on TV or on the web or some animated video or anything like that where you said to yourself, yeah, that was great, but wouldn't it be better if blank? Yeah, I'm sure you've said that to yourself at some point, and there's a place to start right there. But look in other directions for inspiration, too. There's books, there's movies, TV shows. What are some legends and fairy tales that you know? What are daily occurrences that you come across? Let's not forget Jerry Seinfeld, who got rich off taking everyday occurrences and just talking about them.
Right.
That's really the whole idea behind his humor. And there's no reason you can't do the same thing. Do an idea web. And we're actually going to do these when we get into the videos where we discuss the development of your story, because this is not where we're actually covering story development. This is an overview of the entire process. But create an idea web to start off with maybe just the emotion you want to convey, and then maybe branch out into what ways you want to convey it, maybe the characters you have, what it is about those characters. Every single idea you can come up with, get it into that web, because that's going to start giving you a framework from which you can derive a story. So work with it like that. Also, again, this is just driving it home. Talk it out with someone. Even if you don't know where to begin, talk to somebody you know and say, hey, I've got an idea for a story involving this character and that character. I'm trying to come up with something funny. Do you have any ideas? And you'll find that some people do, some people don't. And you might come up with a gem like we did when we were putting our idea together. So next, some common pitfalls, some things about this step that you really need to take into account. And really, I guess these are pitfalls that you can attach to just about everything we're going to discuss from here on out. So keep these in mind. And those are, the first one is overstepping your limitations. And we've already kind of discussed that.
We have, and I can't stress that enough because, again, people that have never tackled large projects end up in situations where they do exactly that. They overstep their limitations.
Right. You are not going to recreate the season finale of Battlestar Galactica as your animated short. It's just not going to happen.
Copyright Universal Studios.
Exactly. But, on the flip side of that, another pitfall is not pushing your limitations far enough. And just because, we're, even in the classroom already up to this point, I have seen posts from people who are saying, well, I'm already not good enough to do this, that, or the other. And, and I see that attitude a lot in classrooms. I saw it a lot when I was teaching at the Renaissance Center. And I would discourage you away from that. Don't think that way. Don't get yourself in a point where you
push yourself.
Exactly. Well, see, every time you say to yourself, I am not good enough to blank, you are putting up a mental barrier. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just by saying that, by making that public, you immediately become not good enough to do it.
That's right.
I mean, that sounds like motivational talk, and in a way it is, but it's also true. Don't ever, ever, ever let me see you saying that about yourself. In fact, if you've made posts like that, go edit them. Do it now. Anyways, next common pitfall is assuming that your idea is cool or funny or interesting. And basically that boils down to something we already discussed, which is getting feedback. You need to get that feedback. Another pitfall is not seeking that criticism.
Oh, there's so many people that are scared to receive criticism for their work.
Yeah, don't just tell people you want feedback. Tell them you want criticism.
That's right.
Encourage them to rip your idea apart. Play devil's advocate if you have to. Find something that you already don't like, or leave something in there that you don't like so that you can get them primed. So they'll start saying, well, now that you mention it, I don't like this, that, or the other. Because if you've got somebody really close to you, a good friend, a family member, they may not want to hurt your feelings. And people who aren't used to criticizing will assume that by criticizing, they're hurting your feelings.
Well, a good example is my daughter, who's working on putting a portfolio together for fashion design and for getting into school. And it's quite funny, as she put drawings together when she was first getting started in all this, she would show a lot of the people around the house. And a lot of people around the house would say, oh, that looks so fantastic. Yeah. You're doing such a great job.
Right.
No, she wasn't. She'd come to me and I would say, no, this is really bad. The proportions are wrong. This doesn't look right. Your shading shows that there's lighting coming from here, here, and here. And that's kind of impossible if you look at the shading here, here, and here. So you got to get all this fixed up. And then she'd just look at me like, well, I'm just not going to ask you what you think no more, because they all say I do a really good job. And
exactly.
Of course they do. They love you and they want to make you feel good about what you're working on. You really want to find people that give good feedback.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Just someone who comes in and says, hey, man, that stinks. Okay, why?
That's right.
And you need to be able to feel it. When they say, it stinks because the lighting doesn't work, that's not grounded, that the color scheme's wrong, or whatever it may be.
And just as bad,
so important.
Just as bad as saying, that's really good, and not explaining why.
Yeah.
I mean, even when you're criticizing, remember, if you say, hey, really nice work, tell them why it's nice work. If there's
I
a
like
flaw,
the way you...
Yeah, I like the way you handled this. I like your shading. I like your use of whatever. I mean, but make sure you make those points and spell it out for somebody. It drives me nuts. And it's all across the web. When you see critiques of drawings or 3D work, I mean, it's even right here on 3D Buzz, where somebody says, here's a work in progress, comments are welcome, and you just get, oh, nice job. It's like, what? Well, what's nice about it? What did I do well? Or people say, I don't like it, or it doesn't work, I'm not feeling it, but they don't express why. The catch, though, is that you will probably, especially if people are close to you, find that that's the kind of criticism you get at first. So encourage them. Sit down and work with them and get them to the point where they are comfortable picking apart your idea.
Now, of course, this brings us to the flip side, and that's those that don't listen to the criticism.
Yeah, don't ever take criticism and be like, well, I mean, you just don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, forget you, man. You don't know. I haven't seen any of your work.
Exactly. In fact, a lot of the people you're going to talk to, how can I put this? Chances are good you don't hang out with a lot of people who are into animation.
That's right.
If you're talking to a best friend or a wife or a husband or anything like that, chances are they're not animators. So they're just coming to you with what sounds funny, with what looks wrong, and they're going to try to express themselves as best they can. But don't assume for an instant that, well, they don't know what they're talking about, so I'm just not even going to listen to it. They are giving you their opinion based on their human experience, and you are trying to give them a human experience in your animated short. If they see a problem, you're already falling short. So listen to them and incorporate their ideas as best you can.
That's right. All right, so that's story and that's script. So now you've got a script. What next? Next is visual inspiration.
Ooh, this is a big one, too.
Oh, it's so important.
A lot of people will overlook this one. Now, hang on. I'm going to try to get fancy. Oh, yeah, we're still in the same one.
Yeah, we're still in the same one.
Whoops. This is where I get all...
That's okay. I'm here to keep you in line.
So we'll do Viz, and I'm going to abbreviate a little bit. Inspiration. We'll abbreviate that too. So you guys see what I'm writing.
This is really important. The internet is just one of the most wonderful references in the world. Use it.
Yeah, you want reference. You want ideas. You want to see what people have accomplished, and you want to draw creative juices from that, if you will. I mean, are you making something that is sci-fi based? Don't make it up off the top of your head. Don't do it. Don't reinvent the wheel. See where people have gone, and don't be afraid to draw inspiration from people. You're not copying, okay? Get that out of your head. Now,
of course, you could, but don't.
You could, but don't. That was my next step.
Do not.
Do not just grab somebody's idea and I'm going to remake Godzilla. No, you're not. But if you want to make some sort of giant lizard that's stomping through your town in the spirit of Godzilla, that's fine. Go watch a couple of Godzilla movies, see what worked, see what didn't. Use that as a way to come up with ideas where you can embellish upon an existing idea. But go out there and seek that reference. And really, again, it's absolutely everywhere. You can't get away from reference images. They're in magazines, they're in books, they're all across the web, they're on TV. One thing I do want to bring up, and this kind of falls along the same lines, it's when you kind of get into designing your characters and when you're deciding upon the look of your various elements. Do not, dramatic pause, do not fall back on the excuse of cartoony. I can't count the number of times I've seen a work in progress where somebody's putting together a character and it just looks wrong. And not to say that, things are out of whack. Cartoony characters, by their very nature, don't look humanly proportional. But they just don't look right. You'll see this work where maybe the head's lopsided or too big or small and the lips don't line up or the waist looks funny or the arms look funny. Don't just say, well, it's cartoony, so it's supposed to be that way. Because every cartoony character you've ever seen, even if they have exaggerated proportions, those proportions are there for a reason. Those proportions have been designed to give you a certain impression and to express some form of emotion. A really good example is Mr. and Mrs. Incredible from the movie The Incredibles. Copyright Pixar. But take a look at Mr. Incredible. He's got a very large chest, big arms, but he's got these really tiny legs, and he's got that little bit of a paunch belly. So why are those proportions there? Because he doesn't look like a human. He looks more like a really out of out of proportion shaved gorilla. But,
yeah.
But the point they're trying to get across is that he's got this massive upper body strength, that he's very strong, because in general we think of upper body strength as what gives you all your force. Of course, we tend to generalize and forget that your legs give you actually most of your strength, but that's neither here nor there. We give him that little bit of a tummy to suggest that he's kind of gone to pasture a little bit. He's older. It's been a long time since he was in his prime. That sort of thing. Look at Mrs. Incredible. She has a slim waist, but she's got those kind of larger hips. And why? Well, she's kind of a soccer mom now. She's getting on in years. She's middle-aged.
She's had children.
She's had children, and she's put on a little bit of weight. So, yeah, she doesn't look necessarily, quote-unquote, human, and I'm doing that with those cool curly fingers when I say human, but there is a reason for all of those out-of-shape proportions. So make sure that if you're going to exaggerate something, that there's a reason for it. And don't allow yourself to go, oh, well, it doesn't look realistic, but that's okay because it's cartoony. It's not okay. There's a reason for every exaggeration you make. Moving on from here, the next part of your pre-planning process is going to be concept art. And I will try to write this one out. Concept art. Now, this is a major thing that will scare some of you, because I imagine that not all of you, in fact, a pretty good chunk of you, are not artists. You're not people who tend to sit down with pencil and paper and draw things out. I know a lot of people who are heavily into 3D who don't fancy themselves as draftspeople. One, I think you should get used to it, and you should do it. If you want to become
learning to draw is really important.
Yeah, if you want to be a 3D artist, remember that without the artist, you're just 3D, and everybody's 3D. Mm-hmm. You want to be an artist, and getting your ideas out on paper with a pencil is so important, and it will make your life so much easier in your 3D experience. I mean, if you need to model out a certain character, it's a lot faster to sit down with a pencil and paper and draft out 5 or 6 sketches than to sit down and create 5 or 6 models that may or may not work. So if you don't know how to draw, get a book, get a video course, go take a class at your local community center. There's a lot of different options you have. You can go audit a college course, whatever you can fit into your busy schedule. Actually, the funny thing is everybody really knows how to draw. I mean, cavemen knew how to draw. You can sit down and you can recreate some sort of image on a piece of paper. Some people just need practice.
Right.
You just need to sit down and do it for a while and then show your drawing to somebody. Does this look like the water bottle I was trying to draw? And they'll say, no, and here's why, because that's not in proportion.
And go back and practice.
That's right. Just sit down and draw for a while. Now, that said, in this particular class, I'm going to be a little bit lenient in terms of the quality of your concept art. I am mostly focused on your skills in 3D animation and the 3D aspect of things. If you're not much of a drafts person, I'm not going to, come to your house and wield a hammer or anything. But at the same time, do try to make a point to get better at drawing if you need to. Now, in terms of this class, I don't mind, I don't care, and it's perfectly fine if you want to hire someone on to handle your concept art. If you want to sit down with somebody who is really skilled with drawings and say, all right, here's what I'm looking for, and maybe you draft out some initial stuff to get their mind going, or maybe you got a really good concept artist who you can just talk to, and they'll come up with what you're looking for. If you do that in the class, tell me who they are. I need to know these things. But, of course, that's fine by me. Now, about concept art, just in the general process of creating it, discuss it with people. Mm-hmm. However you come up with your initial designs, whether you do them, whether somebody else does them, show them around. Here's a character I'm coming up with. Here's the story that I want him to interact in. Get feedback from people and find out what they think. Oh, I don't like how this character has that, or this looks funny. Just whatever it takes. Talk to people about it. And you want to get this concept art locked down. You want to get the look and feel of your characters and your environments as locked down as you can before you go any further. Now, from here, we go into image plane development. So that's something else that I'll actually write down, even though that kind of falls into concept art, but not really. Image planes. And what are these? These are just modeling references. These are pictures you're going to throw into your viewport in your 3D application so that you have something to model up against. Do I require that you use image planes? Not really. I will require in the class that you provide me with at least one set of image planes for one of your models, just so that you get in the habit of making one set. But I know a lot of people who are very skilled modelers who can just take a look at a series of concept art and various images and come up with something that is a nice 3D representation of that thing. And if you're one of those people and you don't want to work directly off schematics, I'm okay with that. But I do want you to at least do it with one character. So one character will require some image planes. Keep that in mind. Now, if you're not so great at drawing, don't be afraid of creating image planes, because image planes are a little, what's the word? They're intimidating to some people. They're really scared. Oh, but I can't draw it so it lines up perfectly in both views. That's common. In fact, it's a good idea if you're using hand-drawn image planes to always assume that they don't line up perfectly in between your views.
That's why we have applications like Photoshop.
That's right. Remember that in Photoshop you can make things line up.
That's right.
And occasionally, even then, though, you'll have little tiny discrepancies, so you'll still be doing some sort of interpolation as a modeler, going, oh, well, this looks like it lines up here, but when you create it in 3D, it doesn't really work the same way. It's a really good example of that, and it's the tried and true, and everybody brings this one up, is Mickey Mouse. You look at Mickey Mouse and all of his cartoons, and you get this really clear idea in your brain as to where his ears are placed. But then you try to actually create his ears and make them look like they do in the cartoon in 3D, and it won't work. Because technically speaking, his ears are always moving around his head all throughout the animation. So keep things like that in mind. Just because you've created in 2D doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work perfectly in 3D. But you can make it work. You can improvise, and you can interpolate from your images. If you are completely terrified of the prospect of image planes, I would encourage you to get some graph paper. Graph paper actually makes it easy. You know that your torso is X number of grid units tall. Your legs are X number of grid units tall. You know that your knee is on this particular grid line, and so on and so forth. By following that very, very simple grid-based principle, you're going to find that creating a proportionate image plane is actually pretty easy. Now, another thing about that, though, is don't try to get too detailed on your image planes. A lot of people I've seen, I've got this image plane and it is a work of art. You can see the wrinkles. You can see, facial expressions. Don't do that. I would make my image planes as basic as possible. In fact, if they were just proportionate line drawings that showed the landmarks for the modeling process, that would be great as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if I was modeling it, that's all I'd want. And then all of the little details, whether they be something I'm going to model in or textures, I will draw from my concept art and my reference imagery. It just keeps things easy, and it means that you don't have to get too carried away in making details line up as well, because that's the catch with image planes. If you add, the more detail you add, the more that detail has to line up from one plane to the next. All right, so enough on that. Let's move on from there. The next thing that you will be creating, and this is a big one, this is the huge one, as my tools disappear, is storyboards with my awesome handwriting. And storyboards are going to be visual representations of your animation. You've already seen these if you've been through Maya Fundamentals. We made storyboards for all three of our projects, and you're going to be doing that here. If you're oblivious to the creation of storyboards, do some research. Now, of course, what we provided for you in Maya Fundamentals was just fine in terms of the creation of storyboards. But remember that those projects were all fairly simple.
Yeah, they were.
They were really, really basic. So if you're doing something that's like a scene that's a bit more technical, which I'm sure all of these will be, you'll need some more detailed storyboards. And if you don't really know how to approach that, start with some research. Many animated movies will offer a glimpse of storyboards and their special features. One of the key examples I like, and I'm sure there's other DVDs that do this as well, is the Invader Zim series. I think even on the very first one, which you can pick up for just a few bucks on Amazon, you can take anyone, or I don't know if it's anyone, but most of the episodes have a special feature where you can click over and watch the storyboards and still listen to the dialogue from the show.
Right.
So it just clicks over and cycles through all of the storyboards, and it's a great way to see how they approached what each scene was going to look like. And if you've got the time, just sit there and watch all of that, and then see what the show really looked like, because you can flip back and forth freely, and it's a great way to see how we made it from our storyboards to the actual animated shot. And it should be some nice inspiration for you, but there's all sorts of different places where you can find that sort of thing. Remember that what you're doing with storyboards is you're showing the key actions and key camera shots. How is your scene going to be composed? What are the main things that your characters are going to be doing? What are the important elements? And you're going to show those in a comic book style fashion, one cell at a time. Remember that these don't have to be super glamorous. They don't have to be photorealistically rendered, chiaroscuro shading and things like that. You don't need all that. But if you need something nice and you don't really know how to come across it, like let's say you have a hard time with stick figures, remember that you can cheat. If you've already got your concept art and your image planes done, then you have everything you need with your current set of 3D skills to create a really rough, proportionate model of all of your characters. And then using more skills that you should already have at this point, you can create a very, very basic rig for your character, or just apply some deformers to them and put them in some sort of a pose which is close to what you want. Take a screenshot of that, print it, trace it out, and then use that as a basis to create your storyboards. I have done it in the past. So just think of little things like that to make it easier on yourself. Don't say, well, all I can do is stick figures, so all I'm going to do is stick figures. Get something that's going to help people see the proportion of your character. Here's how your character is holding himself in this particular scene. And again, it comes down to, if you need to, practice. Work on your drawing skills and get them up to speed. Now, next, in our pre-planning stage, and as this list just gets longer and longer, is we need to determine our pipeline. And pipeline's one of those big words in 3D production. It's like a buzzword. Now, when I say determine our pipeline, in general, that means first we're going to talk about, we're going to figure out what software we're going to be using. Now, I'm not going to go over all the software we're going to be using in this particular video. This is just kind of a stage along the way, as you need to figure out what software you're going to be using and why. Start off by taking inventory of what you have access to. Figure out what you don't have access to that you're going to need. Remember that most anything that you would want to use for a 3D production can be acquired for free on some level. There are free applications out there such as Blender for 3D. There's the GIMP for image editing stuff. You have Virtual Dub for video edits, though that is a bit limiting. You can still use it. You don't have the non-linear editor sort of functions.
You do have full unrestricted use of, well, pretty much all of the Adobe products for 30 days.
For 30 days, that's right. So you have all of these different things you could be using. Just, keep that in mind. But I do want to go on record with this. Don't expect the same results from free software. There's no offense to any of the great free apps out there. Blender is a great app. But there is a reason that digital art apps cost so much, and you do get what you pay for. So if you're passionate about this, even if it's just a hobby, you'll find that making some sort of investment will be well worth it on a lot of levels.
Right.
So go out there and pick up some software. If you can, get a student version. Now, by being in this class, no, you're not eligible for student versions. I'm sorry to report. But there are other avenues. Find ways to get this software legitimately and use it as you can. So, moving on from here, hardware requirements. This is kind of a part of the pipeline system, but not really. So
yeah, it is.
Well, I'll write it down anyway.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to write more. That's all I boiled.
I got you.
Hardware. So you got to take a look at what sort of hardware you have. Why? Because the hardware that you have is going to determine how quickly you can get a lot of this stuff done and how easily you can get it done. For example, if you start off with just your software requirements, then you won't really have an idea of everything you really need. Think about some other stuff too. For in-viewport working, which is things like modeling and texturing, you're probably going to want a nice graphics card. Something that can show a lot of vertices at once, something that has no problem with complex shaders maybe showing in real time. I find in general that high-end gaming cards generally work pretty well because workstation cards are so expensive. But you can get away with cheaper cards, but expect cheaper results. In the end, you'll probably need to turn down certain levels of detail because you'll have a graphics card that doesn't support effect X, Y, or Z. So keep that sort of thing in mind. If you need to pick up a new graphics card, do it. Excuse me. You can get online and find used computer components. I have seen on eBay people selling workstation cards, which, there may be a couple of series out of date, but they still work great and might work better than what you already have. So keep things like that in mind. For rendering, of course, fast processors are going to be desirable. If possible, multiple computers that can handle your rendering, like a rendering farm, will help out a lot and allow you to continue to work while you render. But that's not always completely necessary.
Fortunately, the price of computers have come down so much. If you are able to spare the money, I would highly recommend setting up some sort of basic render farm.
And it can be just one other computer.
Yeah, and we will be talking about this later on in the course.
Yeah.
This is, again, very important because you're going to want to try to expedite the rendering process as much as possible.
That's right. And even if it's just one other computer that allows you to get a render started, and even if it's just slugging along in the background while you continue to work in Maya, that can be so invaluable.
For sure.
So keep that sort of thing in mind. RAM, memory.
Memory's so important.
There's no such thing as too much, unless you're running, I think, Windows, what is it,
I mean, of
XP.
course you can hit limits,
Yeah,
but
you have caps.
the more the better.
But yeah, the more memory you can cram into your system and use, the better off you're going to be.
For
so
sure.
Keep that in mind. For compositing and video editing, a large and very fast access hard drive is going to be a big plus.
SATA 3, baby. And it's cheap,
Wow,
and it's
true.
really up there nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go with SCSI. I mean, set up some RAID 5 type scenarios or something like that if you'd like.
I haven't even heard the term SCSI in a while.
You haven't, eh?
It's been like months now.
Fast wide SCSI and all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, for dialogue recording, and this is a big one that a lot of people don't think about because they always think, oh, well, here's all the parts that I'm going to need in my computer, or computers, plural, in order to get an animated short done. But you're going to be doing audio, too.
Mm-hmm.
And good audio equipment's going to be needed. Good microphones are expensive. There's no getting around it. Go down to the Guitar Center if you don't believe me and go check it out for yourself. Don't expect the same quality from a PC mic as you get from a $500+ studio mic.
That's right.
If you record yourself with a PC mic and you notice there's static or popping or spiking or the clipping, that's to be expected because you're doing this with a cheap mic.
Also, don't forget that you can rent equipment as well. Just break out your local phone book, start looking for places that rent out audio equipment.
Yep.
And instead of having to go out and plunk down $500 and buying a new mic, rent one.
Or if you are just too scared to approach the subject at all, think about renting out recording services.
Yep.
Maybe check with your local radio station, see if they have recording services that they rent out. And actually, if it's a smaller station, it might not even cost that much to say, hey, I want to go in and record some dialogue in one of your studios. How much is it going to cost an hour? And get somebody to come in and run the booth and all that sort of thing. Look into it.
Just be resourceful.
Yeah, exactly. Find ways to get it done. But do keep in mind that you're not going to get, even if you have a PC mic and you really know how to use Adobe Sound Booth, you're not going to get the same quality as you will with high-end audio equipment. Just remember that. Next in our list, which is just, I think we're almost to the bottom of it, which is good because I'm running out of room. We have data organization, and we'll just say org, period.
Oh, boy, what a touchy subject with me. Once again, I can't tell you the number of students that I've met. Somebody says, I'm good with the Macs. All right, fantastic. Well, welcome to my class. Let's get busy. And then they start working on a project, and suddenly you realize that they've got files scattered all over a hard drive or even across multiple machines, and nothing's organized.
Or it gets better. Even maybe they are organized, so they've got this really nice, sharp folder structure. Here's what I'm working on this day, and here's where everything's going to go. But they only have one save. They just keep hitting Control-S over and over again.
Incrementals or switching out or backups or anything.
So as soon as the power goes down and that one file gets corrupted, they lose an entire day's work.
Yeah.
So, this is all the kind of thing you need to consider in data organization. You need to figure out what types of files you'll be creating, how you're going to go about storing them, where they're going to go. You're going to need to decide on a naming convention. Naming convention.
Another big one.
Discover something. Now, take into account, in general, it's not a good idea to have spaces in computer names. So you'll be using things like underscores, or at least I would recommend that you do. But come up with a naming convention and stick to it. Are all Maya files going to be named Maya underscore something? Whatever. Whatever works for you, but find something that is consistent and stick to it. And what I would do if I were you is I would generalize. Don't give yourself a whole bunch of rules to stick over. I mean, you can look at a file's extension and know that an MA is a Maya file, that a WAV is an audio file, and so on and so forth.
And let me just throw this out there
Sure.
real quick, just in case you confused anyone with saying that spaces are generally a bad thing. That's not necessarily true unless you happen to be using certain software packages that were written, perhaps a little bit dated, but are still being used today, and there's quite a few of them out there that may give you trouble with spaces, or certain scripts may give you trouble with spaces. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sure, absolutely. Or jumping between different operating systems.
By going in there and keeping underscores in, or bunching all the words up, but just using a casing convention to determine the difference between the words, then you put yourself in a much safer area for utilizing those files with other applications.
Well, there's going to be some files that you might want to access later on down the road with a command line system, and sometimes those get a little wonky if you have spaces.
So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, absolutely. But do decide on a naming convention and stick to it. Again, start off general. You're going to name it like maybe shot scene, and then what element is it? I don't know, whatever. But whatever it is, come up with it and stick to it and use it. And don't just use it for your saved files. Use it for the things in your scene as well. I mean, stick with naming wherever you can so that you can dig back through and find all the elements that you need. Next, arrange for a backup and sync it regularly.
Yeah, you don't want to risk losing your stuff.
And I don't care how you do this. There's a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You can go buy...
Just keep it backed up.
You could have another hard drive in your machine. If I were you, I would recommend having a separate, completely out of your computer backup.
That's right.
If it's an external hard drive that's in some form of enclosure, maybe it's on another PC. Maybe it's a really big flash drive you have. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I will be able to take our entire project and keep it on a 16-gig thumb drive.
Right, no.
But, I would recommend having 100 gigs somewhere just in case. Now, in my particular case, I've got a 750-gig external Seagate, which didn't cost me too much money. Mm-hmm. But, have something like that where you can keep backing up and back up to it regularly. In general, it's a good rule to say if you have worked on something that you don't want to lose, it's a good idea to back it up as soon as you're done working. So make a habit of at the end of the workday to go get your backup. And, maybe you don't want to buy an external hard drive for whatever reason. Start that library of burned CDs or DVDs. It's going to get huge if you go that route, but it is something to consider. Whatever it is, however you approach it, back your stuff up. I do not want anybody in this class to come to me and say, well, I lost my entire thing. Can I still be in the class if I start over from the beginning? Because I'm going to say no, because I told you in this video how important it was for you to back your stuff up.
That's right. So welcome to the world of auditing.
That's right. All right, so from there, it is good. I already said all this other stuff. So let me move on. The next part of our pre-planning will be our workflow methodology. And actually, this is actually part of the data organization bit. And I think I've already discussed this.
Oh, it's actually part of several things.
Yeah.
With workflow methodology, it falls into a subpart of pipeline and data organization a little bit. Well, not so much, because I'm thinking of data organization just as file management. Well, yeah, okay, kind of does. Workflow methodology, what Zach's talking about here, is external reference setup. Basically, get a plan of attack on how you're going to start referencing your assets when you begin working on your scene files. And it's during the pre-planning stage, it's a good idea to think this through. And what I'm getting at is you really don't want to start putting all of your characters and all of your environmental elements, such as props, etc., into a single file and work on it from there. Keep your elements or assets separated and reference these things in. So decide exactly how you want to break things up.
Right.
Like a lot of people like to animate head separately than the body and then take an animated head with all the full facial animation already in place, put that on the body, which already has all of its animation, and then that's in a scene. Well, split it up in such a way where you're referencing things where everything can exist in their own file so that you can go in, make changes when dealing with only that asset, but then those changes are then felt there at the final, with the final result.
They propagate down through.
That's right. So figuring out how you want to handle this is pretty important.
Right. It means that you'll have to shift scenes more often, and we're going to cover all this. We'll actually have videos over referencing and how to approach it in your projects. But, doing this means you're jumping between scenes more often. If you want to change how somebody's head is animated, you may need to close your scene, go off into the scene where you animated their head and start working on it. But at the same time, it provides this kind of non-destructive look at your scene development. And if something breaks, you're less likely to lose everything.
That's right. And then finally, the last thing we want to talk about in pre-planning, which is so important, is scheduling.
Yeah, and I'm out of room. So I'm going to write this off to the side.
Okay.
And I'm going to write it in such a way where you're going to get an idea of its importance.
Do make a schedule. Do not just run into this thinking to yourself, I will have this done in no time at all and get working. Don't do that.
You've got a lot of things to consider with your schedule. You need to make it, and you need to stick to it. Scheduling topics that you don't know can be really tricky. Mm-hmm. If you know that you need to rig and skin a bipedal character who's got a whole bunch of different plates of armor and whatever, because that's what I'm going to be doing, but maybe you've never done something like that before and you're a little scared, don't use that as an excuse to not schedule it. I know a lot of students that I've had in the past who say, well, I can't really schedule that because I've never done it before and so I don't know how long it's going to take. Yes, you can. Add in some time for research if that's what you need to do. Say, I'm going to take the first 3 or 4 days and I'm going to try out some test rigs. I'm going to work on the rig itself. And then I'm actually going to have the time set aside to create the rig for the character. Just factor it in. Get a whiteboard and put it on a wall in your house. I mean, if you can go down to Office Depot or whatever office supply store you might have handy, or even some grocery store, like department stores, might have like a little cheap 2-foot by 3-foot whiteboard you could pick up. I would highly encourage you to pick one up and get a couple of grease markers and write out a schedule that is always going to be in front of you. Put it someplace where you're going to see it often, like an office wall, bedroom wall. If you have a significant other, they may not appreciate it being put up in the living room, of course. But get it someplace where you're going to see it a lot and be reminded of your schedule so that you can keep up with what's going on. Keep a list of the things that you're supposed to do. You're going to have to find that delicate balance between what you can accomplish and what you should be accomplishing. And what I'm saying in that is that you don't need to push yourself too hard. I know a lot of people who get so excited during their scheduling phase. They're like, well, I'll get all the rigging and skinning done for my character in a day and a half. And it's unrealistic because they've got other things going on, or they just, even if they worked 36 hours straight through it, it's still not enough time to get everything done they want. So don't be overzealous and schedule something so rigid that you can't stick to the schedule. But at the same time, don't give yourself a schedule that is so open and so lax that you don't find yourself taking it seriously. Scheduling is kind of like declaring psychological warfare on yourself. If you schedule too tightly, you will miss deadlines. And when you miss deadlines, you will get discouraged. And if you get discouraged, you will probably find yourself giving up on the project. At the same time, if you give yourself a schedule that's too open, you will find in a lot of cases, you'll be more prone to procrastination. You'll say, oh, well, I've got 8 days to get that done. I can get it done in 2. So no worries. I won't worry about it right now. Don't put yourself in that kind of position. That's why you need to think about your schedule a lot as you make it out. So let's see, other tips about scheduling, just stuff I've got written down in my notes. Remember, and this sounds like that inspirational kind of talk, which I usually try to avoid, but it is important. Success is what is going to keep you going. You want to set yourself up for success. So build your schedule in attainable chunks so that each victory will drive you to continue. Also, and this is a biggie, and I always encourage this of everybody doing anything. It doesn't have to be 3D. It can be anything that requires a schedule. Factor in that very valuable time off. Time where you need to take care of other responsibilities. Let's assume you got a day job or you got a family, you need to spend time with them. Don't set up your schedule so that you will end up working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week on this animated short. It will hurt your work. It will not help you. Don't think that you are a superhuman because you are not. What will happen if you schedule too hard like that is you will start slipping, you will start missing deadlines, you will burn out, and you will quit the project. So make it realistic. Make it conform to any previous engagements like work schedules that you might have, and give yourself some time to sit back, get away from the project, and relax so that you can come back into it energized and ready to tackle the next step.
That's right. That's it. Pre-planning.
So yeah, that's all of the pre-planning section. So a lot of talking just for that.
Pre-planning is very important. I cannot stress how important it is. You are really tackling a large project. And at least what we've got planned out is a large project.
Now, what I'm going to do as I fly around the screen, you guys have to bear with me for a second, is I'm going to clear out all those extra notes that I've taken so that we can move on to the next block in our series, which is going to be 3D asset development.
That's right, because we've got image planes, we've got concept art to look at. We know what it is that we're interested in creating now. So now let's build it.
That was great. Did you see that?
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, well. That's okay. I'll just real carefully knock that out. So
there we go.
Here we have our next block, and this is going to be 3D asset. Can I write development in this whole thing?
Sure.
I really can. That's amazing. Now, what are we talking about in terms of 3D asset development? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. These are going to be your models. These are going to be your textures. Anything that you're going to be creating in your 3D and 2D apps that is going to affect your 3D production.
Ooh, Zach, I'd like to point something out right here.
Sure.
I know for a fact that we have some people that are in this class that have put together animated shorts in the past.
Right.
Now, a lot of these people have established their own workflow over the years on how they like to put their stuff together.
Sure.
So please keep in mind that there are so many different paths that can be traveled when putting together an animated feature.
Right.
Now, these paths are the one that Zach has laid down that he is planning on following from start to finish. So if you're the kind of person that wants to get all of your modeling done, but you don't want to generate textures until you get more into the lighting and rendering phase so that you're dealing with the shader development around the time of lighting and rendering, then that may be the way you want to work. And that's fine.
That's right.
Okay?
I'm really glad you brought that up because there really is no right or wrong way to approach this kind of thing, especially if you're the only person working on it. Now, if you've got a team environment or you're working for a company that's already got something, a rigid schedule set up that you need to follow.
Then you want to get parallel processing in place and so that you can make most efficient use of time.
But if it's all you, do what makes you
different.
feel comfortable.
That's right.
If you want to model out one part of a character and then you want to go ahead and lay out the UVs for that part, provided hopefully it's a separate piece, go ahead and do that. If you want to go part by part and go all the way through model, lay out a UV, create a basic texture, and then go to the next one, whatever keeps you motivated.
Right.
Now, the way I'm going to be handling this is, in general, I will be doing all of the modeling and then all of the texturing and so on and so forth. That is because of the nature of the presentation, because I want to be able to break this up into very logical chunks to present to you. I will be giving you all of the modeling lecture and then all of the texturing lecture and so on and so forth. Just in general, when I'm working, I bounce back and forth a lot. Why? Because I'm human and I get bored. I will sometimes be modeling for days on end going, this character is just not getting anywhere. I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go create some preliminary textures for him or something like that, something to keep me motivated. And if that's what you need to do, by all means, do it. Now, let's start off with the modeling or the creation of models as one of our 3D assets. So we'll begin. I'll just write down modeling because that's important. And I want you to consider a few things in terms of modeling. First, what method will you use for your modeling? When you get to this stage, you're going to have to think a lot about this. Are you going to do all of your modeling in Maya? Are you going to use a Maya ZBrush hybrid workflow where maybe you're going to create a base mesh inside of Maya, run it over to ZBrush and start to sculpt it? Are you going to begin in ZBrush? There's no reason you couldn't. You could start with a Z-sphere model and then sculpt it out. You can retopologize that. You can get all your topology laid out in Maya first. There's so many ways to approach this. So I'm not going to lock you down. Please don't think that the methods that I present, and I will be presenting many different methods, don't think that you have to follow along with exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving you the concepts. I'm giving you the tools. You use them however you see fit. In fact, you may not even want to use the things that I use at all. You might have something else all entirely. I'm going to do all of my modeling in Modo or anything like that. And that's totally fine. Do what's right by you. What types of surfaces do you prefer? What do you think is going to work best for you? Are you going to be using polys, subdivision surfaces? Do you want to use NURBS? There's no reason you couldn't. We have the advanced modeling class, which has some great NURBS modeling curriculum in it. So, think about that sort of thing. Think about what and how the objects, especially the characters, are going to move in your scene. That's going to be it's going to be vital when you start putting your character together. Is it somebody who's going to have a lot of motion at the shoulder? I mean, you've already got storyboards at this point, so you in general know the kind of motions you're going to need. Hopefully you drafted out your storyboards keeping key poses, important, exaggerated poses in mind, and you can start putting that into play as early on as the modeling phase. Do you have a character who's got a lot of motion at the shoulder? Well, you'll probably need some more detail at the shoulder, if for no other reason than to get those blend shapes and various deformers just right to maintain volume. But don't go overboard. In general, just as a tip, and we'll talk more about this once we get into modeling, I try to shoot for middle ground. If I know that I have a lot of detail, I will add maybe 2 more edges into place. But don't think, this has got to move a lot. I'm going to add 57 edges, and I've seen a lot of beginners do things like that. So I'll have this really, really dense mesh in certain parts. But we'll talk about all that later. I'm just kind of giving you food for thought for later on down the road. Planting seeds, if you will. If you're using a high-res ZBrush style workflow, realize that much of your higher detail will actually exist in the form of a shader as a bump or normal map. You are not going to bring a 6 million polygon
No.
model into Maya with any hope of doing anything with it.
No.
Maybe there's a workstation out there that can handle that. I'm sure there is. It's called the Starship Enterprise. But I don't know of any situation in which I've brought more than a few 100,000 polygons into Maya before things started to get really hard to work with. And not to mention render times are going to go through the roof. So we're going to be making use of things like normal mapping or displacement mapping, things to cheat and to get that detail out of ZBrush in such a way where we can still work with it in Maya. So keep things like that in mind, because that actually means that some of your modeling is going to actually be, it's going to come out later on in the texturing phase.
Right.
Make a very low resolution version of all of your models for animation purposes.
Very important.
And don't think that your initial base mesh is going to serve as your low res model, because in the end that's going to be deforming. I'm talking about a low res model that does not deform. If you have a character, take some blocks, take a whole bunch of cubes, and get the proportions roughed out. Maybe add an edge here or there, like maybe for the shin, you're going to add a couple of edges so you can bulge out the calf muscle, just as an example. But these are going to be a bunch of non-connected parts that will not be skinned. They will be parented to parts of your rig so that you have really nice, fast response when you're animating. Get something like that put together for all of the various pieces that need to be seen during animation.
Yeah, and if you're a Max user, you're set already.
I know. It's just kind of, it hurts a little bit because you can just use your skeleton. But if you've got props, and in my particular story at the end, I've got two characters sitting back drinking steins of ale. And so I'm going to have some sort of rough, probably just like a 6-sided cylinder with maybe an extrusion off the side for a handle, but maybe not. Maybe it'll just be a cylinder. Mm-hmm. So, keep things like that in mind. You want some low-res geometry that you can switch over to while you're animating. All right, moving down from there. Now, what types of modeling you're going to be doing? Remember, you've got character modeling to consider, you've got environment modeling to consider, and then all of your prop modeling. We're going to be doing a lot of modeling. Now, I should warn you ahead of time. I will not be showing you the modeling process of each and every little thing that will pop up in our final animated short. We did that in Maya Advanced Modeling. That's where you got to see every single cut and split and tweak and so on and so forth. Now, for our main characters, I will have all of that available. But the way I'm going to do it, just to get your brain rolling in the right direction, is if I'm just going to be tweaking or maybe working on a specific area, whatever it is I'm doing, I'm going to try to tell you at the beginning of the video what the goal of this video is. And if you think you already know enough and you don't need to watch that, well, skip to the next video. But the thing is, I want to make available to whoever might need it all of the cuts and splits on at least a couple of different characters so that you can see the entire workflow with nothing left out. It's just it's gonna keep certain people from having questions. Some people like to work that way, others don't, and if you don't, that's fine. Just skip the video.
That's right.
Okay, so moving on from there.
Well, hang on to finish your thought real quick.
Please.
But when you get over to creating the models for your environment, mm-hmm. and it becomes a very repetitive process.
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to show, like, let's say we're going to do 5 different bottles to go on the bar or something, right? We don't want to show every single one because it's really going to start becoming a waste of time and video space as well as we continue to re-employ the same methods over and over and over.
Well, sure, and if they're just simple objects to begin with, I'm willing to put some serious money on anybody who's been through the advanced modeling class knowing how to model, well, really, just about anything.
Just about anything, actually.
So if it's a fairly simple thing, you may not see the modeling process at all, but I will make a point of opening up the file and rotating around it a few times. I'll talk about it and tell you, here's how I did this in general, and here's some of the things where I had problems, things like that. But also keep in mind, especially if you're participating in this class, that even though I will be showing you, as many of the splits and cuts as I can for at least a couple of the characters, I will be opening up any extra models and showing you what I did, I'm not really counting on you following along with each and every step. I will be showing you all of those cuts and splits on just a couple of the characters in the hopes that you see some tips and tricks that you didn't already know. Give you some special considerations. Also, not to mention that I'll be using several different workflows to create my characters. In some, I will be creating them almost entirely inside of Maya before I take them over into ZBrush. We will be using ZBrush extensively with just about all of our main objects. Some of them I will create in ZBrush through Z-spheres. I'll take the base mesh from that over into Maya and make some adjustments, then take it back over into ZBrush again and start sculpting. Others, I might create entirely in ZBrush and sculpt it, then retopologize it before I take it to Maya. So there's going to be all sorts of different things I'll show you. And in those cases, the reason I'm showing you all the different cuts, splits, and tweaks and whatnot is to give you an idea of what you're up against and what's involved with this workflow. If at any point you're like, well, I think I've already got a clear idea of what Zach's doing, please feel free to go ahead and drag forward, fast forward, go to the next video, whatever. But acknowledge that there are other students who are getting some sort of a benefit from that.
That's right.
Okay, so moving on from there, the next bit of 3D asset development is going to be texturing. And this is a multi-stage process. This is going to involve creation of our UV layouts, which we'll be handling in several different ways. Some of them we'll be creating by hand. Others we will actually, be bringing in plugins to help us do some pelt mapping in Maya. Now, if you're using 3ds Max, congratulations. You have already got pelt mapping, so you're good to go. But we're going to be setting up a couple of different ways to handle UV layouts. Now, in Maya Fundamentals, we created UV layouts to pre-constructed textures. In Max Fundamentals, you actually did the whole thing. You created a layout, and then you painted some textures on it, which is what we'll be doing here. Now, moving down from there, we're going to go into texture creation. We're going to be using Photoshop and ZBrush for this. In a couple of different ways. I mean, some of the textures we may be creating a lot of inside of ZBrush. Others we'll be doing most of in Photoshop. Probably most will be a lot of bouncing back and forth. Where just me in general, just to give you an idea of where we're going, I like to create basic textures inside of ZBrush, but some of ZBrush's painting tools don't entirely connect with me. I feel like, just me, personal, there's nothing against ZBrush. It's a great application. I love it. But I feel like I have more image control inside of Photoshop. So I'll be doing a lot of back and forth, and you guys will see that as we go along. Texture in layers and do an area at a time. This is just food for thought for later on. Once we get into texturing, I'll be talking about this a lot more. But don't think that you've got to sit down and do it all at once. You know, I don't have to get the head perfect and the hand perfect, but if you like to work that way, then please, by all means, go ahead. I find that a lot of people can get bogged down in texturing because making a good texture is not a quick thing. It's time-consuming. It can be very tedious. And in general, to get good at it, you have to love it. Not everybody's going to love it, but to go through this class, you got to at least get through it.
Right.
So we'll be talking more about that as we go through, but that is one of the elements here, is we will be creating our textures. Now, along with the creation of textures, also we have included our shaders, and let me write that down.
And these are just base shaders.
That's right. We're not going to be creating the final texture as it's going to appear when it's finally rendered out in Mental Ray.
No, we're just giving a place to put that texture.
Exactly.
A diffuse channel to populate.
Well, even more than that. Like, let's say, for example, we know early on that our characters, like their face, is going to have some sort of subsurface scattering taking place. Mm-hmm. Well, we might do well to set up a very basic subsurface scattering system so that we can start getting some of those textures into place. Because a subsurface scattering example is not just going to be, we set up a shader and walk away. I mean, there are textures that control where the subsurface scattering takes place, and we might, and this is not locked down. I'm not telling you this is exactly what we're going to be doing. I'm just saying you might want to set up a simple system where you plug in your diffuse channel and start considering what other channels are going to be important to you, because a shader is going to be a combination of a bunch of different textures. Mm-hmm. And so if you're developing a shader, you got to do a lot of back and forth between Maya and Photoshop and ZBrush to get that look just right. And in the end, we're not creating the final result. We're creating something that is pretty close, so that later on, once we get into rendering, we can apply any necessary tweaks and get the final look we're going for.
There's a lot to it.
All right, so moving on from here. Now, I'm going to go ahead again, like I was doing earlier, and I'll erase these notes that I put down here, just because they're getting in the way. And we'll move on to our next block, which is going to be... Actually, you want to read that off for me, Jason? Can you get there?
Next block is going to be audio and video asset development.
There you go. So let me get my little arrow, because that's important. You've got to have arrows.
So Zach's got a really nice feel about how the project's coming along at this point. He's got all of his 3D assets done. He can open them up and look at them every day and go, oh, that looks so nice. I am so good. He can look at those textures, just feel good about everything. Now it's time to take a break away from the 3D world and start playing with some audio and video.
That's right. Now this is something I want to get out of the way. Maybe I should have brought this up earlier. earlier in the video. But this workflow that we're following is not the be-all, end-all of production workflows. It's how we are presenting it. Now, why am I telling you that? Why is that important? Because what we're about to cover, this audio-video asset development, could just as soon take place right after your pre-planning.
Oh, sure.
In fact, in a lot of cases, it does. In a lot of professional environments, but also remember, in professional environments, you have a lot of people working on it. Now, the reason, before somebody raises their hand and says, but why did you present it this way? Mostly because I wanted to get you into Maya and ZBrush and Photoshop as quickly as I could. So we get through the pre-planning. As soon as we know what our characters look like and our environments look like, let's go ahead and make them. That way we get into our 3D application sooner rather than later, because if I had gone the other route of doing our audio and video asset development right after pre-planning, it would be hours and hours and days and weeks and possibly even months before we even touched a 3D application. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I didn't want anybody getting anxious.
That's right.
Just to tell you where my head was at when I laid this out. All right, so audio video asset development. This is where we handle all of our voice acting, video reference for animation later on down the road, and that is a huge step, a huge, very important thing. You can think of this like pre-animatics, and it's going to be very important for the rest of the pre-visualization process. Now, that said, this is something that I feel is extremely important for production. You are going to need some sort of a reference to see how human beings move before you try to make a character move. Even if your character is not entirely human, at least you've got something to go off of. Hopefully you got a character that's got at least an arm and a leg or two or three. So you need some sort of a reference. Now, this class is not here to replace a full-scale character animation course. So you will need something to base your animations from. Now, if you don't have access to video recording equipment, you're going to have to make do with other videos. Like, let's say you have a character that needs to run. You will have to look up some sort of reference for running. It may be a downloaded video that you find on YouTube. I would highly recommend that you get your hands on some sort of a camera, hopefully something that can record video. A lot of even basic Snap digital cameras can record a few seconds of motion these days. So find some way to get video recording capability and put it to good use.
Right.
That's what we're going to be doing, and that's how we're going to present this. If you don't have access to it, you're going to have to make do, okay? I'm just getting that out of the way now. So please don't come to me and say, I don't have the ability to record video. Can I no longer take part in the class? Of course you can, though, and chances are you're going to have a more difficult time getting the references you need. If nothing else, get just a standard digital camera and take a lot of snapshots and go through the motion that way. Create like a digital flip book of graphic images. Okay, that said, let's move on. Video storyboarding. Let me go ahead and write that down because that's going to be very important. And I got to find my cursor. Here we go. Video.
It can be difficult to find with the brush being so small.
It really is. Storyboarding. This is huge. I love this, and this is something that, no matter how good or bad you are at animation, I think everybody should always do this. And what this basically is you are going to essentially act out your story. You're going to go through the whole thing. Now, if you have more than one character, you have some choices here. You're going to need to get somebody else involved, or you're going to have to get very clever with editing your video footage together. Mm-hmm. You can find now, what we're going to do, because, we've got the ability to do it, not that I'm bragging, is we're going to be doing some chroma key kind of stuff. So, in the end, I will be talking to myself because we'll be using green screen. You might not have that kind of ability. I don't expect all of you guys to have access to a nice camera and a green screen, but there's no reason why you couldn't create a simple bit of footage that we can load up into After Effects, which we'll talk about how to actually go about this. Pull out the part where you're acting out one bit, maybe make a mask around it, and then overlay it on another bit of video footage where you're acting out the other part, and just create a very basic version of your animation. Now, why are you doing this? Because you need to take a look at the visual expression of what you've come up with. I'm assuming that you guys are fairly new to this production process, and so just because you can draft out a storyboard that shows what your actions are going to be doesn't necessarily mean that those actions you've thought of are going to lend themselves over very well to an animated piece. So by acting it out, you get to see what's going to work and what isn't. Don't be afraid or embarrassed to go through this acting. If you can't do it, if you can't act this out, your characters won't be able to either. You need to be as expressive as you can be. So have fun with it. I remember when we were teaching at the Renaissance Center, you'd look outside in the hall on any given day, especially during that 2-week process, and you'd see people walking around out in the hall getting timing for footfalls. They'll be talking with their hands a lot, exactly how their character was supposed to be doing. Go through it. Go get a stopwatch. Like if you have a character that's going to be doing a run from one part of the scene to another, get a stopwatch and time out how long it's going to take you to run from one point to the next, and make notes. Jot down everything you can. But this video storyboard is going to be a live action version of your animation. And it's going to be used a lot for reference later on. You're going to shoot a lot of takes to produce this, and you're going to edit those takes together to come up with a final version. Again, we're going to cover the creation of this process as we go through the class. You'll be paying attention to exaggerated motions and body language. Seek feedback from friends. Even if you're going to be a little embarrassed, especially if you're not an actor, but you got to get over that, because as an animator, you're putting yourself out there anyway. So go ahead and get in the habit now of saying, how does this motion work? Does this body language convey what I need it to? And people will generally tell you. They'll say, what are you doing during this scene? It looks like you're playing with your hands or something, or this particular motion isn't working. Why are you doing it? Get that kind of feedback and figure out what is working and what isn't. Now, once you have all those clips recorded, as I already mentioned, you'll edit those together to create your final video storyboard. Once you're done with that, and once that all looks pretty good, of course, also, I should mention off to the side, doing this will also help you get an idea of camera angles, because like in our case, we've got this big knight, and we have this little tiny goblin, and we're going to have a knight who's maybe swinging his sword around while he's talking, maybe all these exaggerated motions. And just by filming this, you'll start to get an idea of where the camera is going to need to be placed in order to crop things out perfectly. Now, I'm not saying that you need to get all your cameras locked down at this stage. In fact, it's too early to worry about that. But just by recording this out, you're going to start to see areas where the camera should be placed to catch this action, that action, or another. Now, moving down from here, the next bit is going to be recording your audio tracks, and that is, in specifics, I'm talking about dialogue. So recording... Wow, that was terrible handwriting, but you can see what I wrote. Dialogue, and we'll do the Old English UE bit at the end of it. Now, this is going to be a fun one. This is where you will have to take what recording equipment you have, hopefully at least a PC mic or something else. I mean, I would put a little effort into finding some decent equipment to record all this stuff. Do what you got to do. But take your time here. Hire on other actors if you need to. Of course, if you've got a scene where you've got a male and female character talking, I mean, I would recommend against trying to do a high-pitched voice if you're trying to act like a girl.
Sure.
Unless that's the kind of look you're going for. But, get the people you need to help you get the voice acting done. If you need to hire them, pay them money, take them out to dinner, whatever it takes. But get this stuff recorded. Make sure that you are picky and choosy about the clips. So have them do a lot of different takes so that you can sort through and find the ones you want. What I would do is I would break my script up into line by line, and then you can piece all that together later on to create your final take. So, anyways, from here, I guess that would cover that. And the next one would be kind of a question mark, because it's not something that at this stage of the game I'm thinking we're going to focus on very heavily. Wow, that was pathetic. But that is music.
Not mucus.
Not mucus. I swear, I think that's what I was trying to write. Music is kind of a questionable part because it is its own topic unto itself. Especially if you are talking about composing your own music for your animated short. Now, in larger scale productions, a la Pixar, DreamWorks, that sort of thing, they hire on these big giant music staff people, composers, and their entire crew to come up with music that conveys a certain mood. I'm not expecting you guys to be musical composers. I'm not one, though you do have access to all sorts of different things. You can get musical scores from movies if you want to. Of course, if you use anything that is copyrighted, make sure you get permission, however that is. Now, I have found, this is just from personal experience, that you can contact copyright holders, and yes, that includes people in the recording industry, and say, I am putting together a promotional video, which is what this is going to amount to. It's something I'm going to put together for free. Can I use clips of this, that, or the other? In some cases, they'll say yes. In some cases, they'll say no, and they'll demand some sort of a payment. But whatever it is, go through the proper channels. If it's not your work, I just want to make sure that's set. But anyways, at this stage of the game, this is where you would come up with the music that you will be using. All right, so next to this, we have video reference, and this is different than video storyboarding, and in the end, it may be a lot more important. Video reference. This is where you're going to capture all of your motions on video. Everything. Do you have a character who's going to be running? Go get some running studies on video. As you speak out your dialogue, hopefully at this point you've got all of your dialogue recorded and your final cut of it selected. What does a face look like when it's saying that dialogue? How is your face acting going to work? These are all things that you're going to have to consider at this point. So basically, what you'll be doing is recreating each of the scenes from your animation several more times, line by line, using your recorded dialogue as a backdrop. In the end, think of this like lip syncing. You're going to lip sync to that recorded dialogue, but you're going to it's not just lip syncing, it's like body syncing. You're going to apply full body acting to this dialogue that you have decided upon and started to work with. You're going to act in time with that spoken dialogue. Shoot each line from front and side angles for video referencing and for rotoscoping later. Now, that's kind of a demanding thing to ask from people. This is one of those things where we're going to be doing it, and unless you've got a camcorder and a tripod, you might have a hard time with it. In a perfect world, you're going to have a couple of camcorders where you could set one up at the front and one up at the side so that you can have the exact same footage that you pull into different image planes to help you animate. If you can't do that, shoot it a couple of times from different angles. And, even if you don't end up pulling the animation into Maya as a backdrop, which is what we'll be doing, which is a technique called rotoscoping. We'll talk more about that later. Then, just have it on hand so that you can watch it and animate and, flip back and forth a lot. Now, again, we'll talk more about all that sort of thing once we get to that stage of the animation game, but it is something you will be putting together at this stage. Next, assembly of picture storyboards with audio. This is something that I talked about earlier, so let me write that down as well. So we have picture storyboards, or your drawn storyboards, I guess I should say, with audio. Take those initial storyboards that you put together and set them to audio. Make a flip book that just, constantly changes along with your dialogue so that you can see how your animation is starting to shape up. Now that you've gone through and acted everything out, did you learn anything about your storyboards? Were there certain parts that don't work? Any parts that maybe that you need to change? If you need to maybe make adjustments to your storyboards for reference later, do that. If you just want to stick to the video storyboard that you came up with and not worry about what you've drawn up to this point, that's okay too. Just do whatever it takes so that you understand any sort of errors that have taken place up to this point so that you can correct for them as you proceed down the production pipeline. It's like I'm doing all of this talking. All right, so really from here, though, we're done with our audio-video setup, which is going to be a big step. It's one of those things where it's like if you just look at it at the surface, it sounds like it's going to be a little quick, short, and easy thing, but it's really not. It's a very large-scale thing. It's how we're going to start taking the ideas that we drafted out on paper in terms of our storyboards and actually seeing, could a character do this? Can I make, can I act this out the way I need to so that I can make my characters act it out? And so on and so forth. It's going to be a lot of experimenting, and capturing that on video is going to be invaluable for later on once you start trying to animate. You're going to have some motion references.
Or even better yet, before animating, when you start setting up your rigs.
Exactly.
Because you'll know what kind of motion is going to be required from your character to pull off all of your scenes.
Absolutely.
And so you can set your rigs up in such a way that it accommodates those needs.
That's right. And a really good example of that is in the story that we were already putting together. There's one scene where our knight character is just about to cleave our little goblin in half. And I've got this nice image, this idea of him kind of up on tippy-toe, and his back is arched, and his arms are back over his head, and the sword is like reared way, almost touching his ankles. It's reared back so far. So you want to look at things like that so that when you're creating your character rig later on, your rig will be able to accommodate that kind of motion. So everything we're doing is going to become so valuable as you progress. But our next step and our next block is going to be the creation of animatics. So let me create a new block. And I'll go back to my brush, and I'll hand draw the arrow because it looks cool. And we'll say animatics. And if you've gone through Maya Fundamentals or Max Fundamentals, you've already been exposed to the concept of animatics. These are essentially the same process you just did with your video storyboarding, but you're doing them inside your 3D application. It's a way for you to establish your timing, to lock down your cameras, to determine where all your camera cuts are going to be, all within your 3D application. And this is going to be so important. And it's nice to do it at this point because you have all of your 3D assets together. Now, in different production environments, again, I've already said that this workflow we're presenting is not necessarily the be-all, end-all. In a lot of cases, you might do your pre-planning and your audio-video stuff and then jump right into animatics, where you're going to create some rough images of your character, some rough models, if you will, and put them into various animatic scenes. Mm-hmm. Because of the way we're presenting this, all of our assets will be done. So creating animatics is going to be a little simpler for us. Now, what are we looking for here? This is where we're going to, in general, make a very simplified version of our animation. It won't really have characters that, like if I have a character running across a scene, he's not really going to be running. He might be posed and sliding like Gumby. But it's a way for me to start really figuring out where my cameras are going to be in 3D space and getting the cuts just right, the camera positioning, all of that. Those are the key parts of animatics, is making sure your cameras are doing what they need to do. So the
nice thing is at this point you've got all of your audio that you can put in.
Mm-hmm.
So bottom line is by the time you get done, all your cameras are locked down, matching up properly with your audio, and you've got some sort of visual reference as to what angle you're looking at things from, characters left side, characters right side, etc.
Exactly.
So you have a good feel for the entire piece by the end of this.
Oh, you can do a play blast and then jump into Premiere real quick and overlay your audio and immediately see what's going to work and what's not going to work. And that way, by doing this in a 3D package, you do have that unique ability that you couldn't do in your video referencing of saying, you know what, this shot isn't working, but I can take this camera and move it over here and not have to react it all out. You just re-render it out. But, in the back and forth of creating your animatics, this is where you are going to lock down the final look, the overall cinematography of your animated piece. All right, so moving on from here. Wow, I've been doing a lot of talking in this video. Let's create another box. And I'll go ahead and draw my little connecting arrow. And this next part is going to be our animation setup. What am I doing?
Animation step up?
Step up. I'm sorry, guys, I can't spell. So animation setup. And this is essentially character rigging.
Yeah, your character rigging, your character skinning.
That's right. Now let me go ahead and jot that down. So character rigging. That's such a big thing here. And it's not like, oh, we're going to sit down and rig this character. All right, cool, we're done. This is going to be a meticulous process of going through and analyzing our video footage that we shot, making sure that our rig is going to be able to accommodate those poses. As we were saying earlier, we're going to be creating our rig with a lot of reference to make sure that all the control that we need is there and controls that we don't need aren't there. Do not, and I'll mention this again once we get into rigging, because I see it so many times in people who are just getting into rigging, don't assume that more control is better. Just because you can control the angle of every single knuckle of a hand doesn't necessarily mean you're ever going to want to do that, because too much control is distracting.
Right.
And it can actually be a pain to work with. Anything that you can simplify within the bounds of getting the look you need should be simplified. And we'll talk more about that as we progress. But anyways, so the idea here is that we're going to be referencing our storyboards, we're going to be referencing our video footage that we've shot, and coming up with a rig that will allow us to have all of the motion and control that we need to get our desired look. Now, let's see, some things that you will need to take a look at and anticipate. And again, these are all things we're going to bring up later. I just want to kind of expose you to the kind of things you'll see later on. Will major joints function properly? The hips, the shoulders, the waist, the neck, the head, are those going to function the way they need to? If you have a character who's just going to walk across the street and maybe wave at somebody and do a little bit of dialogue, he doesn't need to be rigged up with all the flexibility of Spider-Man.
Right.
So keep things like that in mind. Do you have enough control to make the feet behave as well as you need them to? Again, if your character is just walking, maybe you just need a little bit of a roll. But if it's a kung fu fighting scene, maybe he's got to put his feet in some really interesting poses for various kicks. I'm not sure. I'm just making stuff up. Have you gone overboard in some areas and added controls that you don't need or that will get in the way? don't think, even if you're referencing and taking a look at what you should be creating, don't think that the rig you've created is the right thing. Test it. You're going to do a lot of testing, and that's going to be a major part of the rigging process, is a lot of back and forth and saying, does this work? Let's try to animate, let's say we get the legs all rigged up. Let's try to animate a really quick walking sequence. Now, don't worry about how it looks. How easy was it to animate? Did I have controls that got in the way? Did I need control in certain areas where I didn't have it? Back to the drawing board with a rig. Let's take this control out. Let's replace it with this control. Let's add this, take this away, that sort of thing. We're going to be doing that a lot throughout the rigging process. So let's see, moving on from there, we're going to take a look at facial rigging, which is, I know that falls under character rigging, but I'm just going to write it down here. So faces, haha, like this guy. Facial rigging is going to be a really major thing that we're going to be taking a look at, because there's a lot of ways to do it. You can use blend shapes for a lot of it. If you guys aren't exposed to I think we use blend shapes in Maya Fundamentals. I know we did. I don't know what I'm saying. We covered everything in Maya Fundamentals.
Pretty much.
But we're going to take a look at different ways to do it, using clusters, using bones, using blend shapes. Whatever suits our purposes the best, that's what we're going to use. But when you're rigging up a face, you need to look for exaggerated poses. Look for those major phonemes that you'll be using so that you can make the most and get that realistic look of your face. Even if your character's cartoony, you want it to behave in an anthropomorphic, human kind of way. So that'll be a major thing to take a look at. So you will be modeling out a lot of blend shapes in most cases, because blend shapes are going to be the basis for a lot of face modeling. Do a lot of testing. Record a simple bit of dialogue or pull some dialogue out of one of your clips and take a little while and try to do a quick lip syncing test. Is it hard to do because you're lacking a certain amount of control? Do you need to create some more phonemes? Do you have more phonemes than what you really need? A lot of back and forth testing. And another part to face rigging, and this actually also kind of goes over to body rigging and body skinning, but it's something I'll go ahead and bring up now. Will you need new textures for certain expressions? And this is something a lot of people don't really think about, but, if you raise your eyebrows up as high as they'll go and look in a mirror, you get these nice wrinkles across your forehead. You don't want to have to model those in. In fact, in a lot of cases, your character won't have enough detail to actually get those wrinkles into place. And if you did, it'd be too much detail anyway. You wouldn't want to handle that geometrically. You'd probably want to handle that as a texture. So in most cases, you'll need to create a series of special textures that help you get the look in the face that you need, and set up a clever rig that when you raise the eyebrows of your character, you blend over into that texture so that you automatically see wrinkles appear in the forehead. And we'll be talking about how to approach things like that. And it moves on to other things too. Maybe when your character gets angry, like you've got an angry expression, like he lowers his eyebrows and starts to snarl, you can have a slider for anger level that will start to add some flush to the cheeks, because rigging is not limited to geometry.
That's right.
Rigging applies to everything. It'll apply to your texturing. It'll apply to your lighting even, and we'll talk about that as we go on. So just food for thought. Next, we have character skinning. Skinning. And this is more than just attaching geometry to the rig. I know when we were in Maya Fundamentals, that's kind of how we defined skinning. It's attaching geometry to the rig, and that's true, but it's more than that. You need to focus on the deformation of your various body parts and how you're controlling that deformation. That is the key factor here. You're going to begin by determining the type of skinning you need. Are you going to be doing direct rigid bind, indirect rigid bind? Are you going to be doing smooth skinning? And if you don't know what the first two of those are, we'll cover that too. We'll talk about focus on various details. You're gonna look at elbows, knees, fingers, wrists, ankles, the neck. You're gonna have to take a look at how each of those are bending, and you're gonna have to solve any problems. A really great example, it's one of my favorites, is go watch the film Final Fantasy: Spirits Within. Now, granted, that movie is a little old. It was done with an older version of Maya and whatnot, and these days Square Pictures is doing much better-looking things. But there's one scene near the very end of the movie where Gray, or character, he was Alec Baldwin's character, he's standing up on this gantry-way, and he's trying to shoot all the phantoms, and he looks all Rambo-esque. But the ship comes up behind him, and he jumps off of this big gantry-way and grabs Dr. Sid's arm, and Sid pulls him into the ship and all that. But pause the DVD right there when Gray's arm is extended and he's reaching out for Sid's hand. His arm, the bare skin of his arm, is twisted like a rag. So even the pros sometimes have issues with their skinning, but we're going to talk about how to take a look at skinning problems and make those all go away. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to employ a lot of different controls, things like blend shapes. They're not just for facial animation. We're going to show how you can use those in other parts of the body as well to get customized deformation when you start to bend a joint in a certain direction. A really good example would be like a knee or a shoulder. It allows you to keep volume and, maybe... how can I put this? Maybe make a tendon pop out in a knee when you start to bend the knee back. Things like that. We'll take a look at clusters and other deformers, things like lattices, wraps, and wires, and how to best get those into position as part of your skinning system. And I use the term skinning loosely here, because really this ties back into your rig.
That's right.
When I say rigging and skinning, please don't think that these are two completely unrelated topics. They're really going to they're going to do a lot of back and forth in talking to one another. As with faces, will you need to blend in between any different textures for certain effects? And we'll talk more about that as we go. And an example of that would be look at your hand and make a fist. When your fingers are perfectly extended, you have those nice wrinkles in each of your knuckles.
Yeah.
But when you curl your fingers into a fist, those wrinkles disappear or they change shape. You'd want to handle that with a texture. Mm-hmm. So you'd want to blend in between different ones. Now, your particular animation may not require that level of detail, but you should still take some time and think about it. All right, so that takes care of that. Do you think I can fit one more block in this line?
I think so.
All right, let's give it a shot. And there we go.
Easily.
Draw my quintessential arrow. And our next step, and this is probably the biggest step in our whole pipeline, and this is going to be, it's almost sad that it only gets one block. It's animation. This will take a while. This is the point where it's like, get comfy. Now, my talking about it's actually going to go fairly quick, but the doing of it's going to take a long time. We're going to take our video reference material and we're going to apply that to our animation through rotoscoping. We're going to be bringing video reference into the back plate of Maya and animating right up against it, almost as if we were tracing. It's a great way to animate. We're going to do multiple passes of animation. We're going to talk about how you break your animation up into separate passes so that you're doing, some rough animation, then you're going to add your secondary animation, then you're going to finesse it all out and tweak it and make it look, the way it's supposed to look, make it look good when you're done. We'll talk about facial animation and how, as Jason mentioned way earlier on in this video, like 2 days ago, that you might want to animate faces in a separate file and apply that over to, your character when, animated later on. And we'll talk about how you can do things like that. And we'll talk about the finalization of your animation, which is where you're going to make the body and the facial motions work in unison. Now, what do I mean by that? You can't really say that you can animate a face in one file and a body in the other, and they're just going to immediately work. There's going to be subtle nuances. Maybe you have a character who's turned slightly away from the person he's talking to while his face is working, so now you're going to have to shift the eyes, maybe tilt the head a little more toward the direction of the character. This is that last stage where you make sure all of that is working, and it will be a lot of animate, test, see what works, see what doesn't, tweak, test, and repeat over and over and over again until you get something. Now, a quick word about that, too. If you went all the way through Project 2, I think it was, in Maya Fundamentals, you might remember that even there in Maya Fundamentals, we didn't show you each and every single last tweak involved in getting your final animation. And we're not going to be doing it here either, because if we did, the video would probably be 8,000 hours long.
Yeah, it would be very lengthy.
Yeah, and so we're going to get you down the road so that you understand the techniques we're using in the tweaking process, and then we're going to tweak it and expect you to do the same. Don't worry, we're not going to leave you in the dark. You'll know everything you need to know. The point is we can't do it all for you. And, again, if you're participating in this class, you should not be creating the same thing that I'm creating, so it's irrelevant anyway. Next, we move on to lighting, and now I do need a new line. Mm-hmm. So here's my cursor, and we'll just draw it right here. I'll try to give it as much vertical room as I can in case I need to write anything down. All right, so lighting. And I'm going to take my little arrow over here. Where I find my cursor. You like that? A nice ripple?
It looks like one of my lines.
Yeah. Okay, so we move on into lighting. Now, this is where we're going to start pushing our animation toward its final look. Lighting is a big step, but it's also one of those areas where a lot of people who come into it don't really acknowledge or respect how big it really is. Lighting controls everything about the look of your render, and it's so vital and it's so important. We're going to be using a lot of lighting references. I'm going to encourage you to go out and take photos of lighting scenarios that are similar to what you're looking for in your scene. Are you doing an indoor scene that's got a lot of fluorescent lights? Well, go to some place that's got a lot of fluorescent lights and take some pictures. Are your characters shiny? Maybe you got a robot. I don't know. I'm just thinking stuff up. But take some pictures of shiny stuff in the kind of environment you're going for and start getting an idea of what objects look like. Even if you're not going for photorealism, on some level you're going for realism, which is going to be based on the real world. So get some references from the real world. Take a look at movies or other imagery. Figure out what light is doing. Note the type of light and how it is behaving with your surfaces. What's the direction of the light? Are we shooting outside? Is the sun out? If so, where's the sun coming from? What's the color of the light? What is the intensity of the light? How many lights are there? You can't ask too many questions. You're going to sit there and just pick apart lighting. Will you be using any HDR lighting? I'm going to write that down. HDR, and I'm going to put a big question mark and a blank face staring at you. This is one of those things where a lot of people will come into this class going, oh, I can't wait to get into Mental Ray, and my animation is going to use all this HDR footage and lighting. And that's fine. And we may end up using HDR lighting. To be perfectly honest, it hasn't been decided at this point in the game yet. It's not entirely certain whether or not we will need it. And if you don't need something, you probably shouldn't use it. But keep in mind that if you decide to implement HDR, that means you're going to be using Mental Ray, you're going to be using Final Gather, and your render is going to become slow. Why is it going to become slow? Because, you might be thinking to yourself, well, hey, I've knocked out an HDR render before, and it only took about 3 minutes for a 1024 render. Congratulations. Did you notice all those splotches that you had around on all of your smooth surfaces? Those splotches will jitter on an animation, so you've got to take your settings and crank them up through the roof. Why am I bringing this up? I'm just trying to get it in your head early on that big decisions like whether or not to use HDR lighting have huge results on how long it's going to take to get your render done.
Huge impacts.
Big impact. That's exactly right. So, you want to know early on if your hardware can handle rendering the animation before your 156th birthday.
Back again, do you have enough memory?
Yeah.
enough RAM?
Exactly. Or enough processors. There's so many different factors there. But, I want you to be thinking about these things at this stage of the game anyways. So you might want HDR, you might not. We'll talk about that as we actually get into lighting. Creating your initial lighting. You're going to light all the major areas. You'll add any necessary light rigs. Ooh, I'm going to write that one down too. That's really big. Light rigs. And if you're completely new, we did light rigs in Maya Fundamentals. We had one for the alien ship.
Yep.
We had lights that traveled around him. We made sure that the rim lighting was working. But in essence, a light rig is going to be a system of lights that serves a specific purpose and probably in most cases, not every case, but in most cases animates in some way. For example, you might want a rim light on your character at all times. Well, if the camera's moving or the character's moving, in relation to the camera, keeping that rim light constant will be a nightmare unless that light moves in some way. And so you're going to have to set up some animated rig or some motion system to allow that light to follow along. And these will be subtle effects, but we'll talk about the creation of these light rigs as we get into this section. Any effect lights. There's another one. I'll write that down too. I want to write stuff. Effect lights. Do you have something that's going to light on fire? If so, that fire is probably going to light your scene up in some way. At this point of the game, we haven't created our fire effect, but we know it's going to be there, we know where it's going to be, and we know it's going to cast light. You need to sit down and decide how much light is it going to cast. Work on that effects lighting, and don't think it's finalized. Especially in the case of effects lighting, you are, in a lot of cases, probably going to need to do your effects and then come back and revisit your effects lighting and make tweaks. In fact, once you get to the rendering stage, you'll probably be tweaking a lot of your lighting anyway. But, and the lighting process in and of itself is a lot of adjust this light, render, see how it looks, adjust this light, render, add this light, render. A lot of testing is going to take place here. So don't think it's, I'll put in this light, I'll set this, I'll put in this light, set this, and I'm done. It's going to be a lot of back and forth. It's going to be a very time-consuming process if done correctly. All right, so that covers what I want to discuss so far about lighting. So let's get rid of my excess notes because we don't need them. And I'll draw my next box. Let's get our brush out. Tink, tink, tink. And this next section will be one of my personal favorites. So I'll write it big. Effects. This is where you're going to add in those special effects that you've been dying to work on since you started, and I only say that because I'm an effects guy. I like working with particles and various special effects, but this is where your particles are going to come in. You're going to examine the types of effects that are called for in your scene. Some effects can be done with particles, other with clever use of geometry and shaders. Please don't think that every special effect is a particle effect. Others can be done entirely in post-production. Now, at this time, I'm not anticipating doing that very much, but in some productions, it makes sense, depending on what types of software you're using, to create even certain particle effects entirely inside of post. So, your lighting will be in place, and you just need some sort of, sparkly pixie dust kind of stuff that comes out of your wizard's hands to turn this mushroom into another character. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. But sometimes you can do those kind of effects entirely in post-production. So just keep that kind of thing in mind. Now, in our case, the bulk of our effects, as far as I know, are going to be particle-based. We haven't gone through the production planning for all of our effects just yet, so I'm anticipating coming up with a few more. But anyways, get reference material whenever possible. Some effects are outlandish, and they don't take place on Earth, and coming up with a reference might be a little tricky. Draft out ideas when you can. Maybe sit down with a pencil and paper, or take extensive notes if you need to. But anyways, particles are very technical, and it can be easy to get swept up in the process of working with them and forget to present what you meant to do in the first place, especially with non-realistic effects. You might sit down thinking, I need some sort of really cool multicolored sparkle effect for teleportation. I don't know. But in the process of putting together your particle effect, you might lose sight of what you were trying to accomplish in the first place. So take those notes so that you remember where to leave off, and you know if you're actually reaching your goal or moving away from it. Now, in terms of working with particles, and I'm going to write that word down because that's going to be a major factor in effects. In terms of working with particles, spend some time researching how to approach your particle problem. You might not be a particle guy. You might not be super into it. Now, again, we come back to, hopefully you have gone through Maya Fundamentals, where we did a lot of particle work there in Project 3. We did a full-on explosion. We did that really cool snowstorm. We did soft bodies, which are in and of themselves particle effects. So, you've seen a lot. Make sure if you haven't seen that stuff before, you at least review it. But you may end up needing an effect that you don't know how to approach. This is where you're going to need some time to do research. Maybe you've never done something like a fireball or a bolt of lightning or something like that. You will need to sit down and start working on ideas from the drawing board. And don't expect that to be easy if you've never done this kind of thing before. You might need to look up other references to see how other people have tackled similar problems. Don't be afraid to look up tutorials. There are great tutorials over various special effects available all across the web. Go pick some up and go read them, watch them, whatever it takes, and start incorporating some of those techniques into your own work so that you become a better effects artist. So keep notes on any special considerations for rendering later. And this is things like, are you using render buffer particles, things like points or multi-points or streaks, which don't come out in the software renderer, and Mental Ray doesn't pick them up either. You're going to have to bring them out of the quote-unquote render buffer and composite them in later. Make a note of that so that you remember that for later on. Are the particles software renderable, and do they need some sort of shader? Or, if they are render buffer style particles, how are you going to handle things like their coloring? In some cases, you can just take a render buffer particle and render it out as almost just an alpha channel, some level of gray, and then make it look like it's however it's supposed to look inside of post. You can brighten it, you can add glow, you can, add a lens flare, whatever it takes to make that effect look the way it's supposed to, even though all you really churned out was an alpha. And we've actually done that in productions of our own, and you'll see that as we go along. Now, lots of testing is going to be required for particle effects. You will be creating an effect and rendering it out in its own scene, seeing if it's convincing, and doing a lot of back and forth and tweaking. Remember that you'll often have to work with particle renderings extensively in post to get the effect you want. And I already mentioned that, but I just want to kind of drive that home. Now, other types of effects, I'm just going to write that down kind of loosely. Other types. I'll put a question mark. Any non-particle effects, such as certain shaders, because a shader can be a special effect in and of itself. I once put together a shader that went from a textured character to a cloaked, like from the movie The Predator, to like a cloaking device style shader. That shader was in and of itself a special effect. Things like paint effects, which we may be using for outdoor environments for creating things such as grass or flowers or things like that. These are all still special effects that require some sort of attention on your part, but they're not necessarily particles. Okay, wow.
Moving on to the next part.
Moving on, so we'll nuke our notes like we've been doing, though. I guess we could leave them at this point because I think we're running out of blocks, but let's jump over here to our next big area, and that is going to be rendering. Oh, look at me cram that G in there. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed. Tink. Okay, there we go. That looks much better. So rendering, what is this actually going to entail? It is not going into render globals, setting your resolution, and hitting the batch render button. There is so much more to it than that. It is the process of tweaking and finalizing your shaders. So let's write that down. Finalize shaders. I love my handwriting. It's awesome. Finalize your lighting. You might need to make some tweaks to it. Especially now that you got some of your effects in place. You might realize that, those ray trace shadows that I had in there were looking pretty good, but now that I have all these paint effects things in there, they're being problematic. How am I going to solve that? And that actually leads me to the next thing, which is where we are going to break out our final video passes. I mean, just because one particular aspect of your lighting or shading or something isn't working doesn't mean you should do away with it by any means. It might be vital to get the look you're going for. But you will need to break it out into a separate render pass. And we're going to talk a lot about doing this because in the end, what are you doing? You're taking your render and you're breaking it up into a series of various layers that you will then composite back together so that you have a lot of control over what's going on. Now, you've seen this kind of thing before if you watch special features, or maybe you've heard people, doing rendering talk. You've heard about, your initial pass, your diffuse pass, specular pass, the beauty pass. And that's all they're doing is they're taking their render, which, when you're watching the movie, it looks like one scene, but it's really not. It's a big composited stack of various layers that were all brought in separately, and each one of those can be tweaked and adjusted in post. The cool thing about doing this, like let's say you do a specular pass. It's its own thing. It's a separate layer. You have a diffuse layer. You put your specular layer over it, and you're looking at your final shot going, that specularity is a little strong. We need to maybe pull that back a little bit. If you break it out into layers, you don't have to go back into Maya and re-render it. You can go into post and just take that one layer and maybe pull down its intensity or apply any number of other effects to it to make a change at the post level, which will be a lot easier on you in the long run and a lot faster than having to go back and re-render things. And we're going to talk about breaking down your render so that you have the control that you need. Now, there is such a thing as getting too much control. You might end up, I've got every single frame in my animation broken up into 67 different passes, but I'm only going to use 4 of them when I get into post. So we're going to spend some time talking about what control you need and getting the control you need without getting too much out, so that you don't actually shoot yourself in the foot for production later. Once you've got that down, it is time to actually do the render itself, the final render. And that's where, you can start off the render and then probably go away for a week and let your computer work. And we'll talk more about how you can streamline the rendering process and get it done as quickly as you can. The process of rendering across multiple computers, which if you can do it, I would highly recommend finding some way to pull it off. It will make your entire life a lot easier. But also, we're going to talk about organization for rendering. Because, especially if every single frame of your animation is broken up into a separate pass and you're not organized, you might as well wipe your hands off and just close down the project and go away because it's dead. You will not be able to put this back together if you're not highly organized with your rendered files. So we're going to talk a lot about that organizational process. Okay, so that handles that section. Let's erase that. And one more time, you guys love this box drawing bit. I know you do. I know you're really enjoying it. And if you're not, please just pretend like you are. All right, so our next bit is going to be compositing. Now, as far as I'm concerned, compositing is probably the most important visual aspect of any 3D production, because really, literally, this is where it all comes together. I mean, if you've done a really good job on your effects, and your models look great, and your texturing looks great, and your renders were starting to look pretty good, if they're not composited together very well, it doesn't really matter. This is the final bit where you're going to have to work really hard to make sure you're getting the look that you need. And the cool thing about it is, at this stage of the game, if you have broken down your renders into the appropriate passes that you needed, you'll have all the control you need to get the look you want. And we're going to talk about that, how to work with those various passes, if you need to do any color adjustment, if you need to make any sort of tweaks whatsoever based on the controls you created in your final render, how to get those all properly layered together and set in. Not to mention any sort of comp work. When you get done layering together, you might take a look at the final composite and say, you know, the whole thing feels a little too cold or a little too oversaturated. Do I need to pull back on my saturation? Do I need to bring up the saturation to match it with this scene later on? What's working, what isn't? And you're going to take a look at a lot of that sort of thing and make adjustments as necessary. And it's another one of those things which sounds really small at first, but it's actually quite huge. Not to mention that, you know, in our case, we're doing an animated short that's going to take place entirely within a 3D realm. If at some point you are working on it, maybe you're really daring and you're going to try this actually as a project for this class. But if you're doing 3D and live action work, compositing is the key. Compositing is the single most important aspect of your entire project, because without compositing, a 3D character or 3D object can't exist in film in the real world. That is where it happens. So we're going to talk a lot about doing that and making it look good at your compositing stage. Now, the last bit. Or at least, isn't this the last bit?
I do believe so.
I think it might be, though I might draw one more box to even out my line. All right, let's go. And this is going to be our, I don't know what I just tried to type there. Yes, this is going to be our edit, and I did it again. Sorry, guys, I've been doing this for too long. And this is our editing stage.
Editing phase.
Yeah, I'm going to get my brush back out. Editing. There you go. Now, what goes on in your editing stage? Because it sounds really small, and it's really not. Like all of these different blocks in our workflow, these are all drawn-out processes that are going to take some time. Now, what are we doing here? This is where we're going to take those comps that we put together, those composites, each one of those scenes, we're going to string those together into our final animation. Do we need any special transitions from one to the next? Was there some sort of I don't know, maybe a fade effect, maybe a dissolve effect that we need to go from one shot to a next. This is where we can set all that up, of course, using Premiere Pro. This is where we'll be bringing in our dialogue with our final animation, and it's also where we're going to be bringing in our sound effects and musical scores if we're going to be doing any kind of music. You're going to be doing sound effect generation here. So, you know, you might be fortunate enough to have a library of sound effects to build upon. If you don't, we're going to talk to you about how to actually create your own sound effects. I mean, do you need a swoosh for a sword coming down? Do you need clangs for armor coming together? Do you need laser blast sound effects? We're going to talk about as much as we can insofar as it pertains to our project, and I'll see if I can squeeze together some tips to help you come up with other sound effects as well. And then you're going to mix all of that together, and sound mixing is going to be a real major key at this point, because you don't want your sound effects to be so overdriven that they're drowning out your dialogue. You also don't want your dialogue to be so loud that it makes your sound effects sound pale by comparison. You want everything to sound like it's all taking place in the same environment, and that's going to be a real major part of the editing process. And once you get done with that, and you got everything all composited together visually and orally, is it AU oral? I don't know. With your audio and your video, that brings us to our last box. I told you that our last one, but this is our last box. Ignore that little extra line there. That was just for your benefit. And we'll go to our brush and we'll get rid of that. And our last box is celebration. That's where we say we are done. Let's show it to all of our friends and, go out to dinner. That is the entire course that we're going to be taking throughout this class.
That's right.
This is our workflow overview, and it has been extensive. I mean, hopefully after this, you're starting to get a clearer idea of the scope of everything we're trying to accomplish. I have been talking now for a long time, and there's a reason I've been talking for a long time, because this is not a small thing. And I didn't want this video to end with you going, oh, okay, we're going to do pre-planning, 3D asset development, audio-video asset development, animatics, and so on and so forth. I wanted to give you a a solid idea of what's going to be taking place in each one of these elements, and hopefully I've been able to do that. However, that is going to wrap things up for this lecture. Thank you very much.